All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the Beginner to Master Azul series. Um, in the last episode, we went over some strategy topics. And if you haven't watched that episode, or you just want to see what the strategy topics were, they are in the description of the last episode. And I wanted to highlight some forcing moves that occurred in a game on my normal account. I was kind of hoping to find some in the games in the last episode, but none really quite panned out. So here's a game from my main account. This is against an expert opponent, and we have a healthy lead into the third round. And if we look at this draw, then we always want to analyze the draw. A couple things stand out from the perspective of my board. One is, I don't really have to worry too much about this one black, but I should have a good opportunity to prevent my opponent from filling their two black. So one here, one on row one. My row two is flexible in the sense that there are two groups of two blue and then two additional blue tiles. So while I don't have the flexibility necessarily of getting blue or black, I should be able to secure blue pretty easily. And other than that, I'm kind of open. My opponent, obviously they want the black, they want one blue. They're pretty flexible on their row two with white or red. So let's see how this progresses. So my opponent takes a blue, and one thing I would think about in this scenario, if I were my opponent, was maybe taking the two red instead and just locking in that row two red, just because there are more options for blue. And obviously, like, these reds can come together, but I don't know that blue is necessarily like high urgency versus just immediately securing your row two and not having to worry about it. So let's see what I do. So this is one of the plays that I wanted to kind of talk about, or maybe the main play that I want to talk about, because it looks very odd on the surface. So, like, why am I taking this one white tile when there's two blue available? I need a black. What is the purpose of this move? And so I'll show you where I play it, which is on row three. And the purpose of this move is this row three white is going to be a good opportunity for me. My opponent could play white for row two and maybe on row one, but even if I don't complete it this round, most likely I'm getting row two blue in this round. And so it's going to become, a nice adjacency play for me. And the second thing is that I have created this group of three red. So I'm already putting pressure on my opponent's row two, where if they don't take the red now, maybe it becomes a group of four red. If they do take the red now, they're paying -2 for it, one extra and the first player tile. And then also I've grouped the two yellows together. So if they want row one yellow, they're paying extra for that. So it's maybe not necessarily like immediately forcing, but even just with this one first play, I'm kind of already putting my opponent in a sticky situation where they're going to have to be really cognizant of how they handle their row 2 and maybe even their row 1. And I'm basically also like sort of threatening to take away the possibility of row 2 white by, making investments on row 3. So yeah, so they take the 3 blue, I'm sorry, the 3 red for row 2. So we've already got them at -2. So let's see what I do now. Okay, so now I choose to take the blues and do it in a way that doesn't group any blacks together. I actually don't remember what was in the middle. Maybe it wasn't possible to group blacks together, but I'm trying to not create the group of 2 blacks for my opponent. Okay, so they take a white. I take the black. Yeah, and so even even just playing this one tile on row 3, clearly my opponent is like feeling threatened by it and defending this. Okay, so let's see what I do now. A couple options would be like taking this 1 black and playing it on row 1. That does create 3 blue, and my opponent could play it on row 4, and that could be nice for them in the future. Another option would be like taking the 1 blue and playing it on row 1, but then I'm giving my opponent the 2 black for free. So I suspect here I'm going to take this 1 black. Yeah. And then the white. So the rest of this round will play out pretty normally. There's a chance I'll play these tiles. And then my opponent is ending the round with -8. So you've heard me say a couple of times, like, it takes small negatives to make big negatives. And so that 1 white tile play at the beginning that grouped those 3 red together, you can see the impact that it has had downstream in the round. So, even though I didn't finish this row 3 white, I created a -2 situation for my opponent. They then chose to defend for another -2, and then we manipulated the tile counts at the end so that they would end up with the last, having to make the last pick. So at this stage in the game, the score's 28-8, which is pretty much just winning. So yeah, just an example of like a really simple play that's probably a little bit unintuitive that kind of like forced my opponent's hand, at least in that one moment, and ended up with creating this huge lead. I think I was up 13-4 heading into that, or at the start of that round. So a 9-point lead now turned into a 20-point lead. So just wanted to give an example of that, and hopefully we can see more in the gameplay today. So we're at 487, and I think maybe I want to break my rules a bit and open this up to experts as well. My concern, I suppose, is that because strong is such a wide range, like if we get a game against a player at 305 ELO, then maybe we only win 4 ELO, and it's going to take us a while to get to expert. So because we're so close, only 13 ELO away, and I know people are excited to see the expert games, I'm just going to open it up now, and we'll see what we get. Okay, so we get a 372. Okay, so good draw for the second column, good draw for the middle column. But let's take advantage of this 3 black and play that on row 4. This like one singular white is not a very desirable tile to take. Okay, so our opponent kind of threatens to contest us on the same column. One thought here is to take the white, get our first player tile, and kind of force them into this white. The other option would be to start like working on reds. That would give up the first player tile, but we would have kind of a lead in development on the bottom rows. But I do like having the first player tile in the second round, especially when I'm potentially competing for the same column. And we're not worried about our row 2 at this point, so I'm not grabbing the 2 blue. I'd rather have the reds than the blues. Now here there's a debate between black and red. So if I take red, I give my opponent 2 black. Which I think is okay. Would I rather complete row 4? Yeah, okay, let's do that. Let's complete row 4. And my opponent should take 2 red here. Okay, so they're prioritizing the top rows instead of the bottom rows, and let's see kind of how we can potentially punish that. One thing to note is I can't take the 2 red and play it on row 5 because then they can take the 2 blue and prevent me from getting my row 2. So one option would be to just take 1 red for row 5. The other option would be to take 2 red but play them on row 2, so that we secure the row 2. And I think let's go for that. Let's put our opponent in more of a difficult situation with reds in the next round. And again, here, like, we don't care really about whether we get yellow or blue. Making progress on reds is more important. Okay, so some decent tiles for us. We should be able to fill row 3 white. We might not complete row 5 red because they might contest us on it. And there's minimal black, so we really only need to like take a black for row 1 at some point to block our opponent there. It's actually kind of tempting to take 2 black on row 2. But I actually like looking at my opponent's board. One thing they'll be able to do potentially this round is get row 3 blue, which, you know, if they complete this whole top of the middle column, that's going to be really bad for us. So I'm actually just going to start here and take that possibility away right away. Because if I don't do it now, then they can guarantee it by just taking it. Okay. So 1 yellow from our opponent. I'm I am aware of like potentially having whites grouped in the middle. I'm obviously not worried about defending this. There's really nothing I can do, so I'm happy to let them have that. Um, but let's take these whites that puts a yellow in the middle, and we'll at least maybe create the threat of potentially grouping yellows. Okay, and they grab it, so no problem there. Nope, maybe not. Okay, so one thing I'm avoiding is I'm avoiding putting any of the blacks in the middle because I don't want the situation where they create 3 black and then I have to take all 3 at once. So like instead of taking a red from here or a red from here, like for this play, I will just take the red from the center. Some other things we can be aware of is we should try to group these whites up because we have row 4 white, but our opponent, only really has row 5 white, which they don't want to play because they're building this column. So we could make a play for grouping these whites up. The other thing, so our opponent has created the situation where if we take 1 red, they get the 3 black, which obviously we don't want. So let's I'm trying to think if I want to take 2 blacks or just 1. Okay, let's just take the 1, and if they take the red, that's fine. And I am actually going to throw this black out, so I'll plan on grabbing yellow for my row 1. Yeah, and so here, like we talk a lot about who controls the last play or who ends up with the last play. But in this case, like I'm happy to have the last play because it's going to be these 4 whites, and I actually want them. The question is, do I do anything about these blacks? I could just throw them out and really try to delay my opponent's development on black. It's a little aggressively defensive, but I'm going to be able to get my yellow anyway, and I'm going to be able to play those four whites. So this is definitely a little more aggressive than I typically am defending, but and I'm going to end up -6 in the round. Maybe not. For what it's worth, I think this is the right play for my opponent. Yep, absolutely. But I'm basically like, so I'm going to end up -6. We're going to see what the score is. I'm sure I'm going to be down by a healthy margin, but if you look at the way my board is set up, I'm in like an amazing position to score points next round. And I'm almost done with my column, whereas my opponent is looking pretty stuck. Yeah, and my opponent is extra stuck because of this black draw. So only 2 black this round. So I definitely, man, really, I want both reds. I also want to group blues in the middle so I can potentially get them for row 3. There's 3 of these yellow groups, so I don't have to worry about that too much. So let's take a red, and I'm deciding between row 1 and row 5. I'll be able to play black on row 1. So let's play it on row 5. I'm keeping in mind, I don't think it's going to need to happen, but I could end up trying to also build this center column. So there's 10 blacks left. That's the most of any tile or any color. And so I'm going to have opportunities to potentially do that. And actually, I'm going to not do that play. I'm going to take these 2 blacks for my row 1. So again, shutting down my opponent's row 4, paying a little extra here, but I have a lot of flexibility in the rest of my board here. Okay, so my opponent's shutting down row 3 blue, but I can pick up row 3 yellow. So this is looking good for me. And when they take a blue, I'll be able to dump some tiles on them. And I think I want to just take this. No, this is slightly better, right? So not this, from the factory. So they'll take 3 white. They won't take 3 white. So they should be taking the white here, right? This is getting too cute. This row 3 yellow is worth like 2 points for me, and these whites are worth so much for them. They're worth 5 points. They need it for row 2, which is more important than row 3. So this is getting too cute. There's no need to defend these yellows when your play is better. So if you're comparing like defense versus offense and your offensive play is better than the opponent's offensive play, you should probably just do that. Okay, so there's not a lot of white left, so ideally I'd pick up 2 white this round. We'll see if we can make that happen, which goes counter to like defending my opponent's black with using row 2, but I can do it on row 5 as I talked about. And there's 6 blue left, so I can pick up the row 3 blue next round. So let's do. Let's start with black, and let's not put a red in the middle. So my opponent wants row 2 red or row 2 white, but let's keep the red separate since we want it for our row 1. Okay, so our opponent does this. We get to now snag this red. And the black play, while it may not, like, we're not going to prevent our opponent from finishing, but we kind of forced their hand, because if they didn't take those 2 black and then we take them, they're stuck another round on this. So we get the white that we wanted, and now our opponent's in a tough spot because they want 2 white as well. They also want 1 black. Okay, so let's create this situation. Let's take this black, and now they have to pick between white for row 1 or row 2. So another like indirect way of defending. So we're not going to prevent them from getting the row 2, but we are going to make it a more difficult choice. This is a play I don't understand. So I mean, obviously trying to stop us from yellow, but okay, so it does make sense to prevent us from getting yellow because now we can't build the second column. That being said, I don't think we need the second column to win this game. So we'll take those whites. So this is 2 rounds in a row that our opponent hasn't filled out row 2. And it's not that it's not working, and we'll play these blues on row 4. So we'll potentially have a nice 7-point play. So I can't say that my opponent's strategy is not working. They are up by 6. But will they be able to hang on this round? So this is a little bit of a tough decision as to like whether to end the game or not. My opponent can't end the game, so it's entirely in my hands as to whether or not I want to do it. So I might make some plays that allow me to choose as we go if I want to end the game. And one reason I'm a little afraid to like do it right away is because there's these 5 reds and I can't play them anywhere. So even if I outscore my opponent, there's potential for me to end up with a lot of negatives. So I'm just going to take 1 yellow, and I'm taking the one that doesn't put the white in the middle, just in case I do want to end the game with white. So the benefits of not ending the game for me is that I do have this possibility of building this second column in a potential round 6. Okay, so my opponent is creating a situation where I can kind of force their hand. By grouping some of these reds together. So if I take 1 white and then they take 1 red, I will be able to force some negatives on them, but they can kind of play everything. They have a lot of flexibility here. So I'm not really interested in doing that. So I think I'm kind of deciding that I definitely don't want to end the game. So I'm going to secure the first player token in what next round will be the last round of the game. And so now I will take 2 black to finish this out. Okay, and we'll just take 2 blue. This gives our opponent the last pick of the round. I should do this math. Well, now that they've taken the white, there's no math to do. So taking 1 black is obvious here. They'll take the yellow. I'll get the red, and we'll end up on even negatives. So they're going to outscore me, I believe. This 7 will help, but not enough. So still down by 6. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so one thing, our opponent can't play blue. That doesn't mean that this blue is free, because they could, of course, just take stuff. But other thing worth noting is that we're threatening full color black. So we have flexibility in which threat we make on row 3. So what I'm going to do is take 1 black and put the 2 blue in the middle. So if they do want to defend it, it's going to be extra hard. And okay, so they do that. That's good. And our opponent has no additional threats, right? They can't make another column. They can't complete a full color. So we're in the clear, so to speak, with that. So let's, again, like, I don't need to take this 3 blue right away. It's going to be hard for them to defend it. If they do take the 3 blue, I can secure black. So what I'm going to do is take the 1 white, put the yellow in the middle since they want it. So now, they don't have to take it now, of course, but if they do choose to take it, it comes with some extra pain. Okay. So a couple of options here. One is to take these two whites, which I think is perhaps my favorite option. This black is worth 7 to them. The white's also worth 7, but they can get the black and the white. So if I take one black, it still leaves them open to score on both of those rows. So I'm just going to take 2 white, play them on row 5. And actually, I did just leave myself open to my opponent taking the blues. Let's see if they decide to do it. I kind of, since they started playing on row 3 black, I lost that secondary threat. So my opponent maybe should have done the math on taking these 3 blues. So I might have made a mistake there that my opponent didn't capitalize on. I don't know why they would take the black here instead of the yellow. Yeah, okay. So we're, of course, like, I haven't been talking about the end of the round and the tile distribution because we can, of course, play on row 4 red. So it's not, it doesn't impact us that we might end up with these 5 reds. We'll collect the 4 points. -2 is 2 points. So my opponent doing the math on whether they should take the black or the reds. So if I take the reds, like I just said, it's 4 points, -2 is 2, and then they would take the black for -1, so I would be up 3 points. If they take the reds, they go -6, and I go -2, so it's -4 for them. So it is better for them to take the black and let me take the reds. Yep, so they do it correctly. So ultimately, I think it would have been, quote, correct to go for the black versus this blue. So the blue is worth 5 plus 3 is 8 plus 7 is 15. So the blue is worth 15 points. The black would have been worth 7 plus 10 is 17. So the black would have been worth more. And knowing that we were likely to end up with these reds, it would have been worth an additional 4 points for this red play. So, maybe like I should have gone for the black right away, but I wanted to basically give myself the flexibility of being able to do either and safely secure the top 2 rows, and be able to prevent my opponent from doing some things. And basically just knowing like either of these 2 extra bonuses is going to put me over the top in a close game like this. So I wasn't like stressing it too much, knowing that I was going to be able to get one of those 2 options, and that they were both winning. Okay, a 495. So if we win here, this should put us into expert. Ooh, this is a good draw to talk about. Okay, so a lot of people see this group of 4 yellow and want to play it on row 4 or row 5, but we know that we don't like building on the edges. So we are going to take this 4 yellow and play it on row 3. And we have a nice group of white to support building this row 4 or this column number 4. Okay, so it's tempting to take 2 blue, but then my opponent gets to just grab 2 white and the first player tile. Excuse me, I'm drinking bubbly water, so burping occasionally. So let's just take the 2 black and we'll grab our row 1. See what our opponent does. So if I'm our opponent, I would grab 2 white for row 4. Okay, and we will do not the same, but almost the same. Grab 2 white for row 5. 1 white there is interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and prevent that, and I'm gonna be safe with being able to get my row 2. So we'll get this row 2 yellow. And we'll throw away the blacks. So my opponent had the option there between red and black. Red obviously scores you more points this round, but black means you just have 1 less black needed for your, 1, 2, 3, 8 blacks you want in the game. So I think the red's fine, but just there's an option there. Okay. Okay. So looking at this round, this is a pretty nice draw for us. We can immediately finish our row 5. There's a lot of blue available for row 4, and there's red available for our upper row adjacencies. So let's just start by securing this. That way our opponent could choose, for example, to take 2 white, either to play on row 2 or to play on row 4, and then we're kind of scrambling. So because we're flexible elsewhere, happy to just secure that right away. Okay, so our opponent takes the yellow. That's a fine play. I'm gonna start working on these blues. There's a possibility that I end up looking at, row 3 black, for example. Okay. So this is interesting. So my opponent groups these reds, and I think it actually puts them in kind of a weird situation. So their row 2 is looking like blue or red. And I am happy to take blues, so I think what I'll do here, I'm going to assume that the reds might come to me on row 3. So I'm going to take row 2 black. So this eliminates another option for my opponent's row 2. Yeah, okay. So I think this white was a mistake because now I get to take these for free for my row 3. And they aren't, they can complete their row 2, but it's going to be row 2 black, which isn't good for their adjacency. And I did the same thing. It's not adjacent, but I was able to support it with this red play that is going to create this nice adjacency. Okay, so they take a blue to prevent me from working my row 4, but I can just kind of counteract that and take a black. So now they definitely can't get row 2, as well as they're not able to contribute to their row 5. And again, I'm happy with either red or white here. So I'm going to take another black. So I think our opponent, by grouping those 4 reds together, they actually removed some of their flexibility in the round. Where they were flexible on row 2, but when they grouped those reds together, because I had a better place to play them on row 3, I was kind of happy to have them grouped. Okay, so bit of a tough draw for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. Only 4 white remaining is worth noting. Might be hard for my opponent to finish off their top 2 rows, but let's take a look at this round. So yeah, easy play for them. They just immediately deny the row 2 blue. Only 4 black, so they can't complete this. I'm probably not going to defend it based on where my tiles can go. I don't want to create this group of 4, like taking reds from here would create this group of 3 whites, which is great for them, so I don't want to do that. So I want to take reds from this factory. Okay, so they take the white, that's fine. Let's continue with these other reds for good adjacency. Okay, and we're going to be able to stick our opponent in a bad situation. So you always need to be careful about this, because what happens here, their row 1 is compromised now. So I took, they can take these blacks, and now I get 3 whites, and they don't complete row 1. So it wasn't bad to complete this row 3 white, but they did it in a way that left them vulnerable. All right, only 3 white left. So my opponent continuing to defend, which makes sense. I want row 2 blue, probably more than I want to finish row 4 blue, but let's start. Okay, let's grab this yellow, and we're going to create this group of 3 red. And basically, I'm kind of targeting my opponent's row 2 red. And obviously, they can take the 3 red and play it on row 3. But now we're going to start targeting their blacks. Okay, so now we get to create this 3 black and this 4 red, both of which we're comfortable playing. And we're additionally threatening to finish our row 4 blue. Okay, so what do we want here? One option is actually to take this singular white and prevent our opponent from getting row 1. But I think ultimately I do want the blacks. They're better for me than playing this row 5 red. So I'll let my opponent maybe get row 2 red. Presumably they'll take the white, and then I'll just play the reds anyway. Okay, worked out this way. That's fine. Am I happy with that? So I'm creating a situation in which I would be vulnerable to the 5 blacks coming next round, and the 5 yellow. So let's actually leave things open on row 5, and we will give them this row 2. Something worth noting, my opponent is unable to end the game next round, so I will, again, like in the first game, be able to control whether or not the game ends. With a 14-point lead, I am most likely going to choose to end the game. Yeah, so mistakes that my opponent made, I'd say just being a little unaware of where I could potentially damage them. And they ended up in situations where they either had to pay a lot for the top two rows or they didn't complete them at all. Okay, so we want to take from the center so that a group of blue can't be created since we want row 1 blue. We can actually also end the game with row 3 blue. Okay, so let's create a forcing situation maybe. It's not that critical, but when we take the 2 blue, we put the 2 whites in the middle, so they kind of have to take them. And let's see what we want to do. We can't really play anything else for points. And we don't want to commit to anything on row 5 so that we don't end up with a bunch of negatives. So this is actually a little bit tricky. The question is, like, can we lose? And I think the answer is no. So we're scoring 7, including the bonus, and then 5. I'm not counting that bonus since they already have it, so that's even. So we're scoring 12, minus 2 is 10. They're currently scoring 3, plus 6 is 9, minus 1 is 8. So even if they get, one of these, that's an additional 7 or 6 points, and we're up by 14. So we're pretty safe here. So let's take 1 black and just toss it. Again, I don't want to play it on row 5 because then they can stick us with all these yellows. So by taking 1 black, I've created a group of 4 yellows. They can play it on row 4. And that's worth slightly less than playing it on row 3. Actually, with the negative, it's the same. So they'll have an option here. And then we'll just make sure that they don't play, that they can't also play blacks. So, okay, that's interesting. So to avoid negatives, big negatives, now we have to take these blacks. So we're ending up taking a lot of negatives anyway. Good play from my opponent, I think. Assuming they play the yellows on row 3. Yep, that's correct. And I think we should still have the win here just because of the advantage we had heading into the round. So yeah, we will win by 6. Okay, and we have made it to expert. Let me check the recording time here. Okay, 49 minutes. Let's do another one. And this will be the first expert game. And now we have the opposite situation of the strong rating range. So we were at the very top of the strong rating range. So it was likely we would play someone below us. Now we're at the very bottom of the expert range. So there's a chance we'll get someone at like 650 or something. And for context, when I play on my main account, I create normal games for experts and masters. So we're basically going to be playing exactly what I would play on my normal account. In case anyone's wondering, I have pretty much stopped playing Arena on my main account. It's just such a grind of usually games against 200 ELO or 300 ELO opponents where winning gets me between 0 and 2 ELO, and losing is minus 18 or something. So and it's unfortunately uncommon to get matched up against even like 400 ELO or higher in Arena. So yeah, so I've mostly switched to just normal games. The downside, of course, is that you have to wait versus getting matched instantly in Arena. But yeah, I just feel like this is a little bit better for um, the risk reward. I lose less ELO when I lose a game, and I gain more ELO when I win a game. So and hopefully we get a game. If we don't get one in the next 5 minutes or so, maybe I'll cut the recording short. You could see in that last game, my opponent was throwing me some question marks, um, clearly about how long it was taking for me to play, which is of course understandable because as I'm making these videos, I'm taking more time, due to the explanations. But one thing I talked about in the last video is taking time at the beginning of the round to assess the round. And I think that, that applies at each play as well. You want to be constantly changing your view of the round depending on what has happened in it. So even if you create a plan at the start, once some plays are made, things might change, and what you were planning to do might no longer be the best play. So you do want to spend time evaluating each play. And I see people, snap off plays very quickly. Maybe they need one more white tile to finish a row, so they just take a white tile. But maybe that tile wasn't really being threatened, or maybe there's more than one white tile. I mean, just a million, different possibilities. So, yeah, I think it's best to take your time and reevaluate the board at after each play. So no luck so far. Still give it a few more minutes. Let's see how long it's been. Okay, so it's been 5. Still wait a little bit longer. Would be great to get an expert game in to whet the appetite for the next episode, which will be, of course, more expert games. All right. Yuki Yogurt, 524. So a nice, oops, that's a 15. So it's nice that we got an expert who, still in the 500 range. They're not like wildly above us at our 503 rating. So a pretty varied draw. A lot of options here, and we'll of course react to our opponent based on what they do first. Okay, that is not a play I would make. I think if I were to take white, I'd play them on one of the three center columns. I can see what they're going for here, and that there's a lot of black, red, and yellow. So like this column looks good, but it's gonna be, yeah, it's just gonna be a bit. They're building on the edge. So the play I'm gonna make, I basically want to give them like kind of an awkward choice. So I'm going to take 2 black and play it on row 4. And the reason this is kind of awkward for them is because taking 1 red or yellow, feels weird, and then taking 2 blue when they really only want 1 maybe feels weird. If I'm in their shoes, I'd probably just take the 2 blue for row 1 because I don't care about negatives. But yeah, so now they're in this. That was another option, I suppose. Like they feel pressure on black. So I think what I'm going to do is take 2 blue, and I'm going to assume that they're going to take the 1 black, which will group the 4 yellows for me for row 3. And if they don't take the 1 black, I will be able to take it. But because their row 5 is yellow, I'm really interested in defending these yellows. I could have taken the 2 yellows and played those on row 2, but then I don't get this opportunity to complete row 3. In theory, I could get it with blue, but like most likely they're taking 1 blue at some point in the round. Okay, so we are working on column number 2, despite building this yellow. So we'll just take 1 red. So this will actually be interesting. Like we've run into opponents building on the right side, and we've seen how that has gone. I think this is our first opponent building on the left side. And I said that I think the right side is worse. The left side is still limiting. Okay, let's take the blue. So the left side is still limiting, but I think it's a little bit less limiting than the right side. Again, just because when you build on the right, let's say you don't finish this row 3 red in round 1, then you need, red for both row 2 and row 3 in round 2. So you're kind of fighting against yourself. Whereas here, you're building from low to high instead of from high to low. So some bad luck for my opponent for sure. Only 2 blue. So reds 14. This is a great draw for us. We should be able to finish black. We should be able to get row 3 white. We've got some options for defending yellow. Probably just take 2 yellow right off the bat. And our opponent, has only these two blues, so they're going to give up adjacency either on row 1 or row 2. So taking the yellows right off the bat is actually not great because my opponent just gets to finish off this red right away. Conversely, if I take the red, they just instantly get to play the yellows. But I can still prevent them from getting yellows. The question there is then, can I get row 2 and row 3 white? And that feels kind of dubious to me. So let's actually go for the yellows. We're just going to let our opponent have these reds. We can finish off our blacks. Okay. This is not a move I'm scared of. There's still 3 white, so, chances are I can still get it. The thing I don't want to do is let my opponent get row 2 blue. So I'm just going to take a blue here and throw it out. And I think I'll actually take this blue. So what this does, it puts a black in the center, which there's a chance my opponent will want either for row 1 or 2, no longer for row 1. And the other thing it did was put this white in the center so I could potentially group up 3 whites. And I'm now in the somewhat unfortunate situation of if I take this white, if I take I don't remember what I was. Oh, if I take one of these yellows for my row 1, then I'm going to group 3 white in the center, and my opponent can take 3, and then I won't get my row 3. So I don't want to take one of these yellows yet. So I think what I'm going to do is grab a red. Okay, so they do that. So now I can take 1 yellow, and they can. Okay, yep, that's fine. Also fine. So clearly I'm taking the 3 white here. They'll get their yellow. Yeah, the situation there was like, even if they wanted to take the 3 whites, I would get row 3 black and prevent them from getting their row 2. So it's like a win-win for me, even though the whites were ideal. Okay, so my opponent instantly played. Let's see if that proved to be hasty. Not a great draw for us. So for row 2, we've only got red and whites. But I think what's going to happen this round is we're probably going to end up with row 2 black. So there's only 5 of them left. So I kind of do want to get it. I'll sacrifice some adjacency, but it lets me focus my red on row 5. It lets me contest this blue on row 3 if I'm not really worried about prioritizing white or red. So if I took the 2 red there, they were definitely going to take those 2 blues. Now I've kind of forced them into taking this one, the 2 red for kind of a suboptimal play. So now the question is, what do I do? They have a nice spot for these blacks, and like I said, I'm happy to end up with them on row 2. So I'm going to pay a little bit extra here, but I'll just grab those. Of course, we are aware of our opponent's row 5 yellow. There's 3 of them left, so we might want to shut that down. I'm not too eager to finish row 3 blue. My opponent doesn't have good spots for it, and if they end up playing blue on row 4, then they need blue for both row 2 and row 4. Okay, so they take the red. I like that play from them. So what do we want to do? We're flexible on blue. We do need a row 1, but at this point, because red's gone, like black or white doesn't really matter. So let's just hurt their yellow. And then we'll take a blue next round. We will end up with some negatives here. But this was a tough draw. So kind of, making do the best we can. Okay, so we'll grab the blue. It would be nice to end up with, I don't know why they took the blue. I was gonna say it'd be nice to end up with the row 4 white, and it looks like we might. I assume our opponent will take yellow. Yeah. Okay, so we're only down by 3. Not too bad. Oh my god, these red draws are killing us. Okay, so what do we do here? I don't really want to take this red, to be honest. So how many more do we need? We need 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's 9 next round. So let's hope that we can get the first player tile and be able to control reds next round. So okay, let's grab these 3 white, and basically, like, I'm hoping my opponent won't get this blue for the first player tile. I am going to play the whites on row 2. I'm sorry, on row 4, which leaves me a little vulnerable on row 2. But I'm kind of assuming my opponent's not just going to like snatch up these reds right away. And I'm hoping I'll be able to get row 2 red. But I do need to be careful because, I mean, this was a known risk, but if they take row 2 red, then I'm not going to be able to get row 2 and row 1 because I'm stuck on red and white on both of them. Okay, so one yellow from them. And yeah, I guess like I don't have a good option for my first player tile. Though I can take this one black. It's actually not so bad. One black on row 3. I think I like it. So let's do that. So I'm doing this because I desperately need to control reds in round 5. Yeah, these last 2 draws have just been tough. So 14 to 11, 11 to 9, just no opportunity for us to make any progress on red. Okay, defensive play. I don't want to take these reds and get stuck with those blues, so I'm just going to end up taking the white here. And if my opponent wants to take these reds, I'll be able to group up the yellows and the blues, and I'll get stuck with one of them, and they'll get stuck with one of them, and ultimately they'll come out better than me. So pretty reasonable chance that we lose this game, but given the tile draws, I'm not sure really what else we could have done. Okay. I think at this point I kind of have to take the reds, and I will end up eating those blues, but just a necessary evil at this point. My opponent could play the blues on row 4, but if they're smart, they will just take this black and leave the blues to me. And I will be way down heading into round 5. Okay. I think I guess you could debate the black versus the yellow, but there's only one black left. So if they had taken the black, I would have been really stuck. So this should be a very easy decision. The blues are worth 1 point for them. Next round, they'll get this yellow an additional 1 point. So you can say they're worth 2 points total. Whereas if you stick me with these blues, it's 2, 4, 6, minus 9. So there's nothing to think about here, really. Yeah, so that's a mistake that might actually let us still stay in this game. So we're only down by 7 instead of being down by way, way more. Okay, so let us pick the 3 red that puts blue in the center. Actually, let's not take these reds yet because we have choices there. Let's actually just take the 1 red that we need for our top row that puts those 2 blue directly in the center and puts a yellow in the center. Yeah, so okay, so we've made our opponent pay extra already. We can play, we have a nice combination here. So when we take the 2 white here, it puts the 2 yellow in the center. So now they have to pay for, have to pay extra for either their row 1 yellow or their row 2 yellow. And in fact, we can take the other yellows. Granted, they can take the black and it works out roughly equivalently, but sorry, I'm thinking out loud very quickly, but basically because these reds are separated, we aren't like forced to do anything. So we can still, in fact, like take this black. Okay, so now, yeah, so now we just take some reds. Okay, so here's some math to do. So these reds are worth 2 points to our opponent. But if we take 2 reds, they take a white, we go -2. So in that scenario, we go -2. If instead we take 1 white, our opponent takes the 2 reds, and then we take the 2 blue, we're -1, they're +2. Okay, so no, this is just clearly better. And let's see. I don't think we might be winning here, just because. So our top row is worth 9, whereas their top row is only worth 5. Their I don't know what my opponent's thinking about here. They just take 1 white. So their top row is only worth 5 to our 9, and we're getting an extra row of points, right? So they're filling out the top 3, I'm filling out the top 3, but then I'm also getting row 5. So they did have a point lead coming in, but it looks like we're gonna tie. So nice game. Again, this was actually, I think, an easy win for our opponent but they made that mistake in row 4 of playing these blues. Um, Again, these blues were worth a total of 2 points to them in the game, whereas if they had just dumped them on me, it was -9. So um, we should not have tied this game. This should have been a loss. But um, yeah, just a tough set of tile draws for us. Not a lot of red in the middle rounds. So we did the best we could by, taking advantage of the colors that were there. So getting these black out of the way so that when the last round came, we were able to play all those reds. But just a tough situation. So good to walk out of this one with a tie. We earned 1 point. Funnily enough. Yeah, that'll do it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and looking forward to more expert level games in the next one.